You need advice of counsel. You're going to need to know how to answer these questions. These are very important things that I believe that are at the core of the principles of the Constitution in the United States and kind of what you're trying to obtain here in these great United States of America. And so ultimately, we're going to go through basically like three main business requirements of what the E-2 actually requires. The number one thing is you have to actually invest in an active commercial for-profit enterprise. We've already talked about the difference between a for-profit and a non-profit. It has to be a for-profit for E-2 visa purposes. But this is the second prong of that test. Very important. It's an active commercial enterprise. So this is very important. And I know you're listening, through your computer, through your phone, or you're engaged. And this is the most important aspect of your E-2 visa application. Ultimately, it has to be an active investment into these great United States of America. What is an active investment, you may ask? So let's talk about that. So ultimately, an active investment versus a passive investment are two different things, but one will get you that visa, the other one will not. So it's very important that you distinguish the two and understand the difference between the two. So you may be thinking, well, based on my experiences, based on who I am as a human being, as a person who wants to live that great American dream, what can I do to invest in that active commercial enterprise? Well, here's the thing about an active enterprise. An active for-profit business or a commercial enterprise is something where you are actively involved in the management of that business. You're actually engaged in the business. You're running the business. This could be something so simple like a restaurant. How many hardworking people come to these great United States of America from different countries and share their culinary, culture? Think about all these people who come here and open food trucks and restaurants, and let's just leave it in the restaurant space for the time being for example's sake for this video. An active investment is you being that manager. He or she can be a manager of an active restaurant where you are the director, you are the managing owner of that business, running the day-to-day operations of that restaurant. You're trying to get those Michelin stars. You're trying to feed hungry people. You're trying to show people culture of all the food you eat where you came from and what America can perceive and learn, because food brings us all together. So for example, a restaurant would be an active business. It would be an active for-profit business. You are selling food for profit. But at the end of the day, you're showing a little bit of your culture, and that's what's most important. And so ultimately, it's an active business. You're actually actively engaged in that business, the day-to-day. You're creating schedules. You're creating the menu, the creative options and the food items that you're going to provide people in the United States based on your culture and heritage and your upbringing. Something so simple like what your parents probably ate when you were a kid, and the smells and the touch of making the dough and all these great things that your food shows and encompasses as a story based on that culture to the American people. So this is very interesting. That's an active business. But then what is a passive business? What is something that will not get you that E2? That's also just as important to know. A passive business is someone who's a real estate mogul from another country and just wants to come to the United States and just start building up high-rises, and they just want to rent them out and make passive income. Well, they're not actively engaged in that business. They're not creating, usually, more likely than not, jobs and things like that. What they're doing is they're just making money off of the United States and the United States populace. So that's the difference between an active business and a passive business. An active means you're actually engaged. Passive means it's kind of you're just making money, you're investing, but you're not really actively engaged in that enterprise. So that's prong number one, that business requirement number one. Please be engaged in a proactive, for-profit, active commercial enterprise. Now let's go to prong number two. Number two is you got to have the background and experiences. You got to be comfortable. You got to enjoy the life in America. For example, if you are someone who is been running tire shops or been doing oil changes or doing things that require your hands and you're a handy person, then it doesn't make sense for you to open up a tutoring business here in the United States because you may not have that experience. Unless you do, and then we'd be more than happy to help you. But we look at your resume, we look at your passion. If you're someone who loves cooking, if you're someone who likes making bread, then it does not make sense to then open up a consulting business telling people how to deal with their taxes. So it's very important that you choose a business that you're comfortable with, that you have a background and experience with, because USCIS, the government agency that will interview you, or if you're at the consulate level, for E2 purposes actually, they're going to want to know your experiences. You cannot be a mechanic but then have no experience in the food or culinary industry and try to open up a restaurant if you're a mechanic, or vice versa. Now, that may not always be the case, but we'll work with you on that. But basically what they're looking at is your background experiences. You have to have comfort, you have to have the background experience. We'll look at your resume. We're going to make sure that when you go to that interview, you can show, because ultimately when you want to renew that E2 visa 3 to 5 years down the road, you're going to have to show that your business is growing. You're going to want to show to that officer who's sitting at that State Department, that consular officer, that your business is willing to grow and you're continuing to hire new jobs. And then finally, number 3, how much to invest? That's the number one question I get. Attorney Tripathi, Trip Law, what's a good amount to invest to make sure we meet that substantial investment requirement? There's no hardline number, actually. There's no case law or precedent that shows that. It just depends on the industry. It's a case-by-case basis. So for example, we'll kind of go into this, but we usually at our firm recommend about $100,000 to about $150,000 for most average businesses. However, that does vary. If you are a restaurant, for example, $100,000 might not cut it, right? You might need more. You got to buy chairs, you got to pay for the rent, you got to pay for people to hire to work in your business, you got to pay for the food. That might add up, right? So that's going to be a lot of money, and maybe more than $100,000. Compared to a consulting business where, let's say you're consulting about information technology, IT. All you might need is a computer, some internet connection, and a place to have that you call your office. Some chairs, some equipment, things of that nature. But then again, there's complicated IT companies that you may create that might require technology, hardware, software. So all these things really play a role. It's all specific to you. You don't have to be a guru in IT or a restaurateur. You could be someone who creates a trampoline business, or you can create a business involving medication and biologics. I mean, we are here to help you in that regard. So ultimately, that substantial investment amount, you have to have a substantial investment invested into the United States to stimulate the United States economy, but at the same time, make sure that it is substantial based on economics reports and things of that nature, which we would help you with. So ultimately, we team up with franchise advisors, which we have franchise advisors on hand, which will give you guidance to understand what is your passion. Ultimately, you want to enjoy the time that you're here in the United States with your business. You want to make sure you're substantially investing. You want to make sure that you're in that active for-profit business. You want to make sure you're comfortable, your background experiences match up with the kind of work that you're trying to do. Ultimately, it's a lot that goes into this, but ultimately, it's for you and your family. So here we are. There's all these tidbits that we can give you. You can always find strategies. For example, money you may not have on hand. You might not have $100,000, but you can always sign a contract that says that you will potentially be investing in a 5-year deal for a building that you're going to have for rent. And that alone will meet that threshold for that substantial investment. So these are all things we'll talk to you about here at Trip Law. I hope this video was very helpful to you to kind of just understand basically what do we talk about, what kind of businesses ultimately are going to be beneficial for E2 purposes. Businesses that could be service industry or industries where you're actually going to have high dollars being spent, like restaurants and things of that nature, or industries where you're going to be consulting, things of that nature. We can go all spectrum. So you can even have $55,000 and we could possibly get you that E2 visa. It just depends on your case. So ultimately, long story short, we recommend you give us a call here at Trip Law. We're going to specifically and surgically analyze your case and find out, based on the complex immigration nationality laws of this country, what is the best situation for you? What can we do for you to make sure you live that American dream? Not only for you, though, because we know that you're here for your spouse, also for your children who are under the age of 21 and unmarried, and just your family overall. So ultimately, my name is U.S. Immigration Attorney Hardam Tripathi from Trip Law. Just want to say thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you found this nugget of information, this video about the E2 process, the E2 parameters, and ultimately, what is the best business for you? If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Our number here is 863-370-2427. And you can also reach us at info@trip-law.com. That's info@trip-law.com. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we wish you the best of luck with your E2 visa journey. Have a great day.